Today I'm celebrating Labor Day, and for most of us here in the United Kingdom, that will seem like a very strange thing to do because we do not celebrate Labor Day here. Although in the United States, in New Zealand and Australia and many other places around the world, Labor Day is one of the, let's say, bank holidays, one of the public holidays that people will reliably celebrate every year. And it's perhaps not that surprising to me that we don't actually celebrate Labor Day in this country, because here the workers' movements have largely been suppressed. I know that May Day is thought of as like a workers' holiday, and I think that that's probably more because that was one of the days that was traditionally insisted upon as a day of holiday, because it's got such ancient origins for the British people. May Day, the 1st of May, is a Celtic, perhaps pagan celebration that has, it's a celebration of spring, it's a celebration of fertility, and it was a day that nobody was going to work. The dancing around the maypole is a fertility ritual that has been adhered to, has been celebrated for a very long time. Now, in the UK, we have a long tradition of workers' unions that protected the rights of the blue-collar workers, the manual labourers that were brought into the cities from the fields. They left behind their lives as peasant farmers to try and earn more money and live a better life in the cities. Sometimes I think in my life I've glorified the life of peasant farmers. When I say peasant, I use that term as to say basically very poor. People who had to work to survive, to pay taxes to the landlords, they were in a state of servitude. They weren't farmers in the sense of, hey, I've got my bit of land and I can self-determine and I just have to grow my crops and eat a nice life. No, these were people who had to pay taxes, had to pay rent to landlords ever since the Enclosures Acts. And so there was, the life of a peasant farmer wasn't necessarily anything glorious to be celebrated. And maybe the lives that they ended up taking as workers for the Industrial Revolution in the cities was to some degree a betterment of they were able to enjoy privileges that they hadn't had previously. And yet the lot of workers at the hands of the aristocracy, the capitalists, the people who had the money to build factories and such like, has never been that great. It's very difficult for human beings to adjust, I believe, to being just a cog in a machine, to suffer the boredom and the inanity of doing the same repeated procedure a million times a day. You can tell I'm Sagittarian, I'm prone to exaggeration. However many times a day it was, people had to do very repetitive work, sometimes mind-numbing, meaningless pieces of work. Now, as the workers tried to protect themselves from the forces of capitalism, as it's argued, constantly looking for harder work, for less remuneration, unions formed, and I think it's in that sense that Labour Days became really important in various places around the world. It was a way for workers to stand up and to say, we are here to be counted. You cannot just take advantage of us. You may talk about us as if we are just human resources, but we are human first and foremost. We are not just like some anonymous material dug out of the ground that you can mould into any shape you like. We have dignity as human beings. We have a need for meaning and purpose, and we have a need to be able to enjoy our lives as human beings. We are not just to be taken advantage of. And it is this spirit of standing up for what it is to be a human being, what it is to be a man, woman and child in this world, is what I wish to honour on this day, Labour Day, as it's celebrated in many places around the world. So many people have died at the hands of the Industrial Revolution. So many lives were lost before the proliferation of health and safety. So many lives continue to be lost in the course of work. Predominantly men's lives lost as they build and protect and create the machine that is civilization, that enables us to live in the comfort to which we have mostly become accustomed. Even those people today who consider themselves poor are probably so much more wealthy than our ancestors. We suffer different kinds of poverty, emotional poverty, lack of community, but it's rare these days to find people who are actually dying of hunger, who are actually dying of malnutrition, who are actually dying from exposure to the cold, etc., etc. The problems of civilization and industrialization are not done. It is not over. Even the promise of AI and technology, this promise that seems to have been a carrot held in front of us for many decades already, still has not been realized. The promised techno-utopia where nobody has to work, well, I don't even want to begin to forecast whether or not that dream shall ever be realised. Today, I'm here to celebrate Labour Day, the fact that human beings have an inbuilt dignity that is worthy of respect and for remuneration, to be honoured by the system that it is that their labour is used to sustain. So for all those that struggle, for all those who are still working, some even endure slavery to this very day. It's crazy to think that our civilization that we are able to enjoy was built on the back of slavery and, if not chattel slavery, you know, it's funny because I'm perched here on the edge of another idea that takes this so much deeper, what it is to be a wage slave, chattel slavery, to be a wage slave. You know, we may get money for our work, we may get reward for the fruits of our labour, but that doesn't necessarily make us free. It doesn't actually give us the option for self-determination if we are obliged to do things like pay taxes, pay rent. If we don't have access to land, if we don't have access to the earth for our own self-determination, we are always a pawn in somebody else's game. There was a wonderful economist called Henry George, whose work I have great admiration for. He was an inspiration to Aldous Huxley amongst many others. And Henry George asserted that all wealth originates from the earth. Without the resources that come from the earth, we cannot sustain ourselves. And therefore, as long as the earth itself is the private property and people are evicted from that land, then they are condemned to perpetual suffering. And this is something that the diggers and dreamers were asserting in hundreds of years ago in the United Kingdom as the Enclosures Acts were being unfolded. So the struggle for workers, the struggle for the right for self-determination on the land has been going on for a long time, and it's a fight that's not over yet, even though it's so little spoken about today, or at least it certainly was during my education or my indoctrination in the UK school system. So again, a moment of thought to honour the workers who live today, who have lived, to all of us who are obliged to use our sweat equity just in order to buy our daily bread. A moment's thought for Labour Day.